Hi everyone, this is Ron with Neowin, and today we're taking a look at the Honor 10x Lite. I find this to be somewhat interesting fun because the Honor 9x Lite, the predecessor to this, came out just earlier this year. It was released in May. So this is a very quick successor, and it's even weirder when you consider that the Honor 9x family started with the 9x and 9x Pro from last year, and those don't have a successor yet. So we're getting a successor to the lower end of them before the other two. But so that's their strategy. And because it's coming out so soon after the 9x Lite, a lot of the internals are the same. So you have 4 gigabytes of RAM, 128 gigabytes of internal storage, which you can expand with a micro SD card. And the processor is Huawei's Kirin 710A. So that is pretty much the same as the 710F that was in the 9x Lite, but there is a noticeable difference because a notable difference, I should say, because Huawei used to be able to work with Taiwan Semiconductor, which is a very popular semiconductor company that makes processors. The thing is, because of the restrictions that the United States government has put on Huawei, they can't work with TSMC anymore. So now they are making the processors in China with SMIC. And that's the company that makes the 710A. So it's basically SMIC's version of the same processor. It's built on a 14 nanometer process instead of the 12 nanometer from TSMC. And from what I read in the specs, weirdly enough, this one doesn't support 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi while the other one did. So that is an interesting downgrade there, but it shouldn't be a huge issue. I doubt that you're using this phone to do tasks that require very fast internet, but if you do, then this might be a problem. Anyway, we'll get into the unboxing now, and we'll just open up this thing. So we get that out of the way. I think this must be some sort of press box because everything here is pretty barren. The plastic wrap is nothing special. There's no manuals in here. This is literally just the SIM ejection tool. And then here we have the first big upgrade of this phone, the charger, because this one supports 22.5 5 watt fast charging. So that's what Huawei calls the Huawei Supercharge. And that charges, like I said, at 22.5 watts. While I believe the 9x Lite only charged at 15 watts, maybe 18. And not only that, but the charger now uses USB Type-C. It was very weird that the 9x Lite was still using micro USB in 2020, but not anymore. So USB Type-C, it's gotten to the point now where it's actually easier if you want to use a spare charger you might have at home. You can probably more easily find a Type-C charger than a micro USB one lying around. So it's good that they're transitioning to the newer standards there. And I appreciate that. Another thing worth noting with the battery and charging is that the Type-C port here supports reverse charging. So you can plug a cable here and then into another device like an accessory or something and charge the other device using this. It does only charge at 2.5 watts, so it's not fast whatsoever. But like I said, it's more so for accessories, and if you're charging an accessory, 2.5 watts is decently fast. It's not, I mean, it's acceptable, let's say that. It's better than nothing. But yeah, it exists. So let's go around the phone here. So like I said, Type-C port there, and a speaker grill, headphone jack, microphone. Here we have the SIM card slot over here, which also has the micro SD card slot if you need to expand the storage. Another microphone up there. And then on this side, a volume rocker and a power button that also doubles as a fingerprint sensor. I don't see those very often. The fingerprint sensors on the power button. I know they exist. I just don't happen to not review a lot of phones that have them. But it's pretty convenient to have them there. I'm okay with that. I'd rather have it than on the back. So that's pretty good. Speaking of the back, you see I got the pretty boring color here with black. Nothing special. I would rather have gotten one of the other colors they have, but I don't get to choose. Looking at the back here, we have the 4 cameras here on this setup. The module pops out a little bit, but it's definitely not as big as many other phones I've seen with camera modules like that. But there's 4 cameras, and that's also a notable upgrade over the 9x Lite. So here we have a main 48 megapixel camera, which is very similar to the 9x Lite. It's got a f1.8 aperture, so decently, pretty good actually for capturing light. And we also have the same 2 megapixel depth sensor that was on the 9x Lite. So for portraits, when you want to like blur the background and see the subject more clearly, there's that. It's one of those cameras that I kind of feel don't add much value to a phone, but oh well. It's a strategy that a lot of companies use, so I'm not faulting Huawei necessarily. But we do have 2 new cameras here, and one of them is actually something I appreciate a lot, which is the 8 megapixel ultra wide camera. I think the value in those is pretty self-explanatory. The fact that you can capture more from the same spot is pretty good. It's good for like landscape shots, or you're trying to capture like a big crowd or something like that. I like the ultra wide cameras. And then there's another 2 megapixel macro camera. So if you want to get really close to a subject like a little bug or a plant or something, and you want to get really close and capture some of the smaller details, the macro cameras can help. With 2 megapixel, I'm not sure that's super useful. Sometimes it might even be better to take a picture with the bigger sensor and crop it, for example. It really depends, but with 2 megapixels, it's not amazing. I would rather have a better wide-angle camera that can also double as a macro camera, but that's what we get. So we're going to turn on the phone, but before I do, I forgot to mention earlier, the battery here is also a huge upgrade over the 9x Lite. So that one had a 3,750 milliamp hour battery, I believe. This is 5,000, and Honor says this can last 59 hours on calls. So that is very, very, very good. I don't know if we can believe the 59-hour talk time, but it's somewhat believable because 5,000 milliamp hours is a lot. The Kirin 710A is a somewhat low power processor, so it sounds like it's going to be using a lot of power. And Huawei has very, very aggressive battery management. I've actually complained about it because a lot of my apps and stuff tend to not send notifications when they should and things like that on Huawei phones. But an upside to that is that battery life tends to be very long. So the claim is believable, but I'm not completely sure we can say that's true. Still, 5,000 milliamp hour battery on a Huawei phone, that usually gets you 2 days easily. So we're just going to go ahead and turn it on, and we're going to set it up, and I'll be right back. So one thing that you'll find that when you set this up, especially if you've never used a Huawei phone before, is that because there's no Google services, instead of using a Google account, you have to use a Huawei account. And so Huawei provides a lot of the stuff that Google tends to provide, backups and all, and an app store and all that. The big problem with this is that if you're used to the Android ecosystem, and you're used to how easy it usually is to switch from one to the other, from one phone to another, right? Here, you're kind of getting stuck in the Huawei ecosystem because it's not really as easy to restore backup on a non-Huawei phone from a Huawei phone. So it's kind of a trade-off you're making there. You kind of have to be committed to being on Huawei, or you have to be willing to go through the effort of copying everything from a Huawei phone to a non-Huawei phone because it doesn't really communicate with other Google Android phones. But we're gonna go ahead and log in. So when you set up the phone, you do get the option to copy from another device, and Huawei actually does a decent job of copying things. You can copy apps and a lot of the things in your storage directly. So it's a pretty good system. And also one thing that Huawei does pretty well that I don't think Google does, for example, with their phones, that you can restore backup from another phone even after you've set it up initially. The phone clone app is always there, and you can always copy data at a later point. That's one thing that Huawei I think does really well, because a lot of the time I'm setting up a phone, I don't want to be restoring the phone when I'm doing these videos. So then I just reset it and set it up again after I've done the video. So with a phone like this, I can just not set it up as a new device and then restore it after the fact without resetting again. One downside of Huawei, though, is that they always have these things where they try to recommend you apps when you're setting up your phone. And in this case, 9 of them are already selected. So if you're just clicking through, you're going to get 9 apps here that you probably don't care about. Like, I don't care about 8 of these 9 apps. There's only one here that I would use. And even then, I'm not going to install it right now. So I'm going to skip that. And you see the warning there. They even warn you that you're going to get more app recommendations in the future. I really don't like that. I just don't. I think it's annoying. And I think most people will agree that ads kind of suck, especially when you already paid for the phone. But it is a cheaper phone than I think most Android phones would be. So that's kind of a trade-off you make when buying a cheaper phone like this. But whatever. So in terms of the software experience here, this is all very similar. This is running EMUI 10.1, same as all the other Huawei phones I've reviewed so far. No Google services, of course, as I mentioned. And not a lot has changed. So everything's very familiar. I still hate that I can't swipe up to open the launcher. I think you can enable that in the settings. I just wish that it was a default. I hate this method here. Instead of the Play Store, we have the Huawei App Gallery. And again, when you open it, you can sometimes get see a bunch of recommended apps again. And again, a bunch of stuff that's pre-selected that I don't want. So I'm gonna skip these again. And that's that. No updates right now. But that is kind of annoying. Moving over here, you see a bunch of apps pre-installed, but I'm not sure they're actually pre-installed, because when you open one of these folders, it takes you to this app advisor thing. So these are also just recommended apps, and you can tap them to install them, but they just place them on your home screen like this. I'm still not a fan of that. It's a lot of problems I have with the software here. But setting all those problems I have with ads, the experience here shouldn't be too unfamiliar. Huawei provides pretty much everything a normal Android phone would. It's just their own version of it. So you have the app gallery, a music app, video app, books, calculator, weather, all of that basic sort of functionality you'd expect. You even have a feed here on the side that's also got news and stuff like Google would kind of do. So it's pretty standard for a Huawei phone, for an Android phone, I should say. And the experience itself is very similar to what we've seen on other Huawei phones in terms of what you can do and how it looks. This is still running UMUI 10.1, still Android 10. So it's all very familiar. One thing that's new here, well, new-ish, it was added recently to some Huawei phones, is pedal search. So this is something that Huawei, like I said, added recently. And it's a search engine that can search for a lot of things. But the most notable thing it does is searching for apps. And it's very interesting because obviously you don't have the Play Store, and not every app that's on the Play Store is going to be on the Huawei App Gallery. So what Huawei tried to do here is they made this search engine that searches for apps specifically, but it goes to all sorts of websites where you can find APK files or apps to install. So if there's an official web app like WhatsApp has here, you can install it. Or if it's on APK Pure, it's gonna find those apps on APK Pure as well, like Instagram and Netflix. It even goes to this website that I didn't know existed, APK Monk, and it also finds some of them there. You can install them easily from the panel search engine here. So it's supposed to make it easier, obviously, to install apps that you're used to finding, but that you now don't really know how to because you don't have the Play Store. So I haven't really tried it before, but I see it's surfacing a lot of things that are not on the app gallery. So I imagine that is very useful if you're trying to find things that you wouldn't find there. So I'm interested to see if that can actually address the needs for apps that you might have. But aside from all of that, like I said, very familiar experience. Nothing is really changed here. Let's just touch on the display before we finish. This is a 6.67 inch display, 1080p, 2400 by 1080. So that's a 20 by 9 aspect ratio, if I'm not mistaken. And it's an LCD panel, obviously not AMOLED. And it looks alright. There's a punch hole cutout, so it's not a notch like the 10x Lite had. I much prefer punch holes. I think they just look way better. So the display looks nice enough. Pretty much in line with what I would expect from Huawei. Maybe not as much blue. I always feel like there's a lot of a very strong blue hue from Huawei phones. This one seems a little more balanced than I remember them being, but I could be making that up. So that's that. Just to close up, the phone is only available in Russia right now, and the price is close to 185 euro by conversion. It will be available in Europe, but an official price hasn't been revealed yet. So we'll have to wait for that. Anyways, that's all for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.